Hey, this is Daniel. This is a video we shot a couple of days ago. This is a mare named Ariel. She belongs to some good friends of mine, and they were having some real trouble saddling her. Little background on her: this mare has been through some wrecks. You can see a big gouge in her shoulder right there. There's another one on her belly we didn't get very well, and then she's got some pretty good scars on her left side also. So she has had a heck of a wreck somewhere in her past. These look to me like maybe she got into a fence, T-post ate her up, the hole in her shoulder is pretty darn significant. She's got two good ones on her belly on both sides. So that may or may not have been associated with her being saddled. So the story that I got, my friend got her home. They had ridden her once or twice, and he actually had put up a round pen at his house, and the panels weren't solidly staked down yet, but he tied her to a panel and went to saddle her, and she sit back and ripped half of the round pin down, and it was just a big old mess. So they called me, and I have had this mare for about a month at this point. I have only been saddling her. What you're going to see today is me saddling her at Liberty, which is sort of my big gun in the arsenal of this. I really was expecting just to play with her for about a week. So I didn't want to get too in depth with things in the beginning. And then the young man that's going to be riding this mare came over and started taking a couple of lessons with her. She does ride just fine. She's a sweet little mare. She's easy to catch. Everything seems fine with her except for this saddling issue, which I'm now pretty convinced is fairly deep-seated. So now I'm a month in, and now we're going to pull out the big gun. Now, not a whole lot's happening in the beginning of this video. I'm just sensitizing her to that flag where she'll move off of me. Here in a little bit, I'll start kind of calling for her nose a little bit more. One thing I'll just point out, notice my timing with the flag here. I get her going. See, I'm not swinging it around as she's traveling. That desensitizes the horse. I'm just getting her going, picking her up a little bit, getting an eye coming to me. That's what I'm doing now. See me using the flag here. I'm focusing on, see her nose is out. I'm going to put a little pressure on her while her nose is out, and I'm going to back off when her nose tips in. And that may not be something, it's pretty subtle at this stage, so it may not be something that you can really see on the video. But that nose tipping towards you is a real big sign in the round pen of that horse becoming willing and obedient, compliant. All right. So, and I just have a plastic bag from some store, grocery bag kind of a thing there on the end of this stick. It was a fairly windy day. That's why we're doing the voiceover. And there was also, when we began shooting, there was a crop duster working the field in the background, so the audio I knew was going to be no good. So y'all can leave a comment. Let me know whether you mind the voiceover or whether you prefer me talking in real time. All right, and she's pretty consistently traveling around with her nose to the outside. I'm not at all afraid to push a horse until their lungs tell them that they need to find a better way. Now, you will note this is a 60-foot round pin that we're working in. Now she's starting to slow down a little and her nose is coming in. So we're starting to make a little progress. Also wanting to poop right there, see her tail lifting up. So those are all good signs that she's relaxing a little bit and kind of starting to think about being a little more cooperative. So anyway, this is a 60-foot round pin, which is larger than I would prefer strictly for groundwork. So I'm having to work pretty hard in here too. Part of why I'm using that flag so aggressively, I want to project and really get this mare where she's moving off of me, and I'm not having to chase her around here so much. Also, the young man that owns her is about 12. So I need to get her sensitive as possible where he has enough oomph to be able to work her. The mare, I think she's 8, 9, 10, something like that, middle-aged. She comes out of Texas somewhere. We don't have a real big history on her. I think they actually have papers on her. There's a gelding that kind of came in the package with her, and that horse is a pure rescue, and he was really, really, really poor. I think the ASPCA had actually taken him from his owner's court order deal and all, and somehow wound up in the hands of the lady that they got this horse from, and he kind of came with him. He was really, really poor. He has all kind of scars on him. We'll probably do a video with him as well, because he's definitely a problem child. I don't know if he'll be fixable. All right. So just staying persistent here, pushing her and waiting on that eye. I wish my wife had zoomed out a little bit more where you could see me and the horse at the same time, all the time. We'll have to have a little talk with her about that, because that's not very helpful if you can't see what I'm doing. So this mare is a really good indication or example of training cycles. You're going to see her get better and then worse, and get better and then worse, and get better and then worse, kind of throughout. And what generally happens is the peaks and valleys of that cycle hopefully is raising up. So our first valley is our baseline. We're going to get to a peak, then the horse is going to cycle back down. Well, hopefully the valley of that second valley there won't be as low as the first initial was, and then the second peak should be higher than the first peak was, and so on and so forth, sort of stair-stepping up. Now this mare she did know her way around a round pen a little bit, but there are a few problems that I'm going to address as we're doing this as well. For instance, she wants to swap eyes on me. I think she does it right here in a second. She certainly does it half a dozen times throughout, and we kind of get that sorted out by the end of this little working. But keep in mind, I'm not just purely working on her groundwork skills. I'm doing this with an agenda in mind, so I'll let a few things slide here that I wouldn't have if I'd have just been working on that. Here she changes eyes. So normally I wouldn't allow that, but in the end, right now I'm just trying to build her willingness to come to me, because at the end of the day, I know she doesn't like to be saddled, and I do want her strongly enough bonded to me that she's going to stand there, and that bond with me is going to override her fear of being saddled. One thing I'm going to talk about for a minute, this mare is a legitimate problem horse. Most of them aren't. So like I said, when I first got this mare, hearing the story that she had and everything, I figured I would have her fixed in a few days. And I started out loose in not loose, but in a round pen with a long lead rope and a halter on her, and just working on saddling her. And then I progressed that to having her tied, not to the round pen, but to a hitching rail, a solid metal pipe, and saddling her there. And she's never really had a big wreck with me, but she definitely shows anxiety. And what I'm kind of doing is I'll tie her up and saddle her, and I'll come back 5 minutes later and unsaddle her, and I'll go ride a horse, and I'll come back. So she may get saddled 30 times throughout the course of a day. And I wasn't really riding her at all. She's just standing there tied. She really didn't like to be tied at first. Lots of paw and lots of anxiety, dancing around, hollering for her buddies. She also is a mare that's buddy sour. And so a lot of insecurities. This is a fear-driven sort of a horse. And so I'm just trying to break the mental pattern. Now, I guess what I would define as a problem horse, her mental pattern around saddling is deep. And so here I'm trying to rub her on her neck and kind of activate that little spot of endorphin, so she's sticking her nose out. She doesn't react a whole lot to this throughout the video, but I'm hoping over the next couple of days she's really going to kind of let her hair down and really get into that. So I really need to make friends with this mare. I'll also say, while I'm saying that, this mare, when you go to saddle her on the right side, the offside side I'm on right now in the video, She allows me to do that just fine. When you're on the other side, that's where she really fights. And she will about run over you, or at least she would. She's never kicked or bitten or done anything malicious, but she is coming your way. And so I've had to whack her in the belly a bunch of times and that kind of stuff and get her sensitized and respectful enough where she'll kind of keep her distance. But as the family's coming over, they've been coming over once or twice a week, and I'm having them saddle her too and kind of showing them what's what. She's still about running them over. So there I was just working on her, keeping me on the eye that I'm trying to be on rather than putting me where she wants me. And we're just building rapport. So anyway, the mare is fearful, reactive, but not malicious. And the little boy has ridden her, I think, twice at this point, and has really had pretty decent rides on her. He's not an experienced rider at all, and she has really kind of covered up for his errors and things, and really tolerated him pretty well. So I really do think this is a pretty sweet-minded little mare. She wants to be good, but she just really has some junk in her mind with regarding this saddling. I think it's highly probable when they first brought her and I saw those scars. I think it's highly probable that happened while she was being saddled, because this really does seem to be the only issue I can find with her. And certainly the wreck that would have caused those scars would be emotionally and mentally deep as well as physically deep with the scars. So what we get when we have a true problem horse like this is really akin to PTSD. We know when people experience PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that's really a result of someone coming across something that is so harmful and outside of their ability to cope or deal. So it's way outside of anything they thought they would ever actually deal with. That they then kind of process it all the time until they can finally find a way to deal with it. And I think that's sort of like this filly. My experience with problem horses is a lot greater than my experience with people with PTSD, but like the PTSD people, they have flashbacks. There can be certain things that trigger that event, and you know, they'll go from perfectly fine 1 second to full on panic, fight or flight the next, and they don't necessarily know why. That's sort of the way saddling was for this filly, and that's why I'm doing this at Liberty now, because I'm really making her. It's really important that I can get her into a thinking rather than a reactive state of mind, and that she can sort of start to deal with and process her issues on being saddled, and we create a new mental pattern and get her out of that old mental rut. Sometimes it takes pretty significant things to get you out of that rut. And so basically just working on her wanting to come to me. She does a lot of licking and chewing. If I haven't mentioned it before, licking and chewing correlates in the brain to a release of dopamine in horses. Dopamine is a feel-good neurochemical. That's a big reinforcing chemical. So usually whenever a horse is licking and chewing, they just figured something out, and they've kind of accepted it, and they're getting a nice big reward chemically in the brain for it. And here's another sign of submission, putting her head down right there. That's sort of like, let's make a deal. This filly's head is very expressive. She gets nice and low-headed at times, and she gets fairly high-headed at times, so you can kind of see her little internal RPM gauge readily. Again, I'm going to go over there and rub on that spot on her neck. You can see I'm doing a lot of work on this offside initially. And I'm not really here to flag her, so understand that. This is not a full-on desensitizing escapade. I'm simply working with the saddle here. And we are using the advance and retreat technique when we get to the saddle, but I don't need to flag her 100 times or anything like that. That's not where her problem lies. You can do all of that stuff. It's not harmful, but it's in the case of a horse like this where she has no issue with that, it just wouldn't be a very productive use of my time. I'll say that when I started this, I figured this was going to take me either 15 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. And it did wind up being right at an hour. Okay. And I'll also say, like, I don't ever really approach working a horse from the perspective of getting something done as quickly as possible, or I rarely approach a horse that way. So there's a lot of things in here that I kind of try to lock in my gains. I chew the same ground over and over a few times rather than making the progress that I know that I can make. And again, you know, this mare's got a pretty deep and fairly negative mental pattern established regarding being saddled, and so I need to reinforce the good pattern as much as possible. So this is probably the third time she's been in a round pen that I've worked her. The other ones were just cursory, just to kind of see what she knew. I mean, they were 10-minute little workings. And then I had the young man that owns her lunge her around a couple times before each ride. As a matter of fact, he did that. The last time she was in a round pen, he worked her. And it didn't go so well. I had to kind of get her turning to me. So a little bit of her not wanting to turn to me initially was probably a remnant of that ride. All right, see the head? High. Nose out. She wants to leave. All right, now the nose down. Can I handle this? I really want to be okay with this, but I'm not too sure. Okay. No. Memory serves, we're fixing to go through another one of these cycles. She's been good here for about 10 minutes. And now she's kind of had all she can handle, and she's going to need a little break. If it doesn't happen right here, it'll be pretty quick. There she's trying to change eyes on me again. I'm starting to put a little pressure on her when she tries to do that. I said that's not really my primary reason for being in here, but if I can kill two birds with one stone, I will. All right, so head down, nice, submissive, happy to deal with you posture here. She's getting a little better about wanting to come to me. If you haven't seen a lot of my groundwork stuff, the way that getting a horse to come to you works is first getting both eyes on you, and then you walk a circle toward their butt. So I'm going around behind her, but I'm not getting any closer or any farther away. The distancing is important. So it's a consistent amount of pressure because the distance from her hasn't changed. I'm just putting her in a situation, and I keep her in there until she finds the right answer, and then I stop. And you will usually pretty quickly get the hind feet stepping away when you do that. The next step of progress is when you get a front foot to step toward you. So that's what I'm doing. I rock her back and forth, get the hind feet stepping away, and we get a front foot to step toward. And then we just wash, rinse, repeat. Hind feet stepping away, a little less ready to do it that direction. That left eye, she doesn't want me on that left side as much. You can see we're kind of more pivoted on the front end right there. And then I just go to be with her. I don't want her away from me for very long. The general premise is rest with me, work away from me. Okay. Again, I'm not in a hurry to saddle her. She gave me a little trouble getting up to her right there. She's getting worse. I'm kind of seeing that decline in the training cycle coming, so we're just trying to lock in the gains. Now I'm on the circle. Whenever she does take that step toward me, like if I had a drone shot from the top, if I'm walking that circle around her, no closer, no farther away, when she takes that step toward me, I start walking out of the circle. So I'm spiraling it out and giving her distance, and that's what helps to sort of pull the horse in. You're creating a vacuum when you give them a little more distance. Okay. Each time you see me rubbing her belly, I'm actually rubbing the scar down there. She is sensitive in those areas. I don't think physically sensitive, I think more mentally sensitive. And the scars don't look great, but those are huge gashes in her. So I don't know if she was doctored for this, if she was left to her own devices to heal. You know, she's got a pretty massive chunk out of this shoulder that you're looking at right now, that right front shoulder. I'm honestly amazed that she's sound with that much muscle missing. So as I'm rubbing her too, I'm kind of looking for, I haven't really found this mare's sweet spot where she really likes to be scratched. See the head up? She's taking it, but she's thinking about leaving. We still have plenty of work left to do here. God bless you, Daniel. Okay, see, I'm on the circle. I'm getting closer, not getting further away, and there I spiral out. So that step right there, probably kind of hard to see from this angle, but it doesn't take much. You get a foot further away from them and they can feel that release of pressure. Good girl. Both hands on her head. I do that a lot with kids' horses. I've tried to work with this young man on how to properly halter a horse, but he still tends to like to grab both sides of the halter and walk straight up to her with it in her face. So I kind of want to assume that posture and scratch her face, where hopefully she'll be as tolerant of that posture as possible. Just letting her think. You don't always need to chase them away. Let them think. I'm also conscious if I chase her too much here, that saddle pad's going to bounce off of her. There she's licking and chewing it. So it's all about setting up the circumstance and then having them make the choice. You see how my weight is on my foot that's furthest away from her. See there again, I'm trying to make myself as unthreatening as possible. Now, again, with breaking of the pattern, I'm going to start putting the saddle pad in some unusual spots. I do this when I'm first saddling colts too, but she probably has never had a saddle pad up there by her ears before. And so whenever you break established patterns, you cause thought. We've got a reactive horse that we need to be thinking, so breaking established patterns, super important. There's not that many ways to do that with saddling a horse, so every little thing at my disposal I'm going to try to use. Okay. And that time she came to me, and I was actually on her left side, which again is this mare's weaker side. She's less comfortable with me doing all this from the left than the right. Now I've got it up on her hips. It's going to fall off right there, so I just keep my pad out of the sand. And again, that kind of broke the pattern. I'm trying to keep the eyes from swapping, but she did it. My timing wasn't great, so just kind of let it go. Again, I don't really want her resting away from me, so do the best I can there. Touched her with it a little bit. Now we've kind of been in the bottom of that training cycle, so we need to motivate her a little bit, get her feet talking to her lungs and her lungs talking to her brain. Okay. I had a little problem on the hip, so we're going to go right back to doing that. And this time she follows me a bit more readily. I really liked how she did that. So she got a little scared and she squirted out there. But as soon as that pad fell off of her, she turned to face it. And you can see how careful I'm being about not scaring her with the pad. I'm banging it against my legs pretty good there to knock all the sand off. Yep. Nope. Turn away from me, you go to work. That's the way it goes. Nose comes in and I'll back off. See, she's always a lot more okay with coming to me if I'm in her right eye. On the left eye, there's always hesitation. We get that improved somewhat in this working, but still there. Okay, changed eyes on me right there, so I'm going to push her a little bit harder. I don't want her to feel like there was no penalty for her leaving right there. We need to motivate her a little more strongly and a little more strongly. So this is about the second time I've pushed her away, second or third, and you can see I'm getting a little bit more firm. Now it's time to get those feet moving. It's either this training cycle or the next one that when she gets to the valley and I have to start pushing her. She actually does push back on me a little bit. She kind of threatens me with body language a couple of times. So that's sort of coming up. And again, the PTSD reference. This is a fairly extreme state. And extreme things can happen that you might not expect when you're dealing with it. See the hind feet? Hadn't got the front feet. We're waiting on the front foot to come, and there it is, in a spiral out. Okay. Always takes more time when I'm in the left eye than in the right eye. One of the little tricks that I tend to stay with when I'm working with problem horses, I generally begin on the right side because generally the problem, now here I'm not going to let her change eyes on me. I'm going to push her the other way. Okay. Usually I have more of a blank slate on the off side or the right side than I do on the left side, which is called the on side. And so if I can begin with a blank slate and work my way into the problem, then I'm always going to do that. Don't let her change eyes. There you go. See, she's getting more and more sensitive to it as I kept kind of increasing the pressure. But that's maybe the fourth or fifth time I've put pressure on her for making that bad decision. And now we got that fixed, but we have another little problem now. She doesn't want to come to me. All part of the training cycles. Don't get discouraged when this is where she starts. Yeah. Don't get discouraged if things get worse. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It is a natural part of the process. So I'm not going to let her, we're not going to just take a break. And see, I'm poking on in that same spot. That's an outright threat to kick me. Now, I'm way out of range, right? So I'm not worried about that. But I'm going to push the heck out of her until she stops threatening me for sure. Okay, good. Sensitize her a little bit. Kind of get the hierarchy reestablished here. Moves pretty good for a fat guy, huh? Alright. Now, I am a fat guy, so I'm going to get myself a little stick so This is easier on me. It's hard not to watch this video and not be kissing to her. And okay, that was a little better. Sort of like the triggers that she's having problem with. The way she rides, she's caught, she does all these things just fine. She just has problem with being saddled. These things can be fairly specific in their origin. So she gave me a little trouble at that far gate. That's where I'm going to poke on her in that spot until... Okay, now, a lot of licking and chewing. We got her lungs working, we got her feet working. See how she wants to keep me in that right eye going this way? She doesn't want me to swap around to that left side. So I'm going to keep going until she allows me on that left side. A little more scolding for changing eyes on me. Nose is out, see the ears? Yep. Not particularly happy. That's okay. Don't be happy. You can be unhappy right out there as long as you keep moving your feet and working your lungs. And if you want to be happy, you just let me know. We'll work on that too. Okay, big shift in the head, right? Head's coming right down each time I let her stop. But hey, here's the deal. You can stop, but you have to let me on that left side. Testing whether she's going to try to kick at me again. I think we pretty well have that solved. I don't think she did that anymore. Okay, notice I am trying to have her turn into me in different points. Alright, now that's what I've been waiting on, where I can send her back over and stay in that left eye. There we go. Just keep setting it up until she makes the choice. This is what a lot of novice horse people have trouble with, is that when things go south like this, they don't realize that that's part of the process. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. So you don't ever take that personally. You know when you start that there's going to be highs and lows within this ride or working this horse on the ground or whatever. You expect them. See how she traveled around there with her nose in that time a little bit? Getting better. So we're climbing out of that low. Let's see if she has to go as far or as fast this time. Alright, I think she's tried 2 or 3 times, so I'm not letting her stop right here. I'm going to keep her going for a couple minutes to build that motivation. You have to be a little bit careful doing this, or they can learn. They can misunderstand that what you're trying to do is send them off. That she gets into this little period, and then when I get with the actual saddle in a little while, she does this again. So you really have to be careful on what the horse is learning, because they may be learning, but it may not be quite what you want them to. Now there, she's getting a little more hooked to me. She stopped right when I stopped right there. She needed to move those feet a fair bit. Now she didn't try to swap eyes on me that time. So I don't remember if we have any more trouble with that. We may have that little problem solved at this point. The guy that owns this horse kept telling me that he knows how patient I am with a horse. And I keep telling him that that's not true. this isn't really me being patient. This is just me understanding the process, and that this mare has deep anticipatory reactions to what's going to go on here. And so it's going to take a fair bit of time and motivation to overcome those and get her thinking. So it's not that I'm being patient with her, it's just that I understand that this does take a fair bit of time. If it begins to take more time than I think is reasonable, then I wouldn't have hesitated to put a rope on her, a halter on her again, and kind of saddle her a few times with her tied, or not tied, but just with me holding the lead rope. And I know that I can do that without problem. That's what I've been doing for the last month. I didn't wind up doing that in this ride because it happened within an hour or so. But if we'd have been going an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes, I'd have certainly stopped and done that step. Now, we had a big pushing her around. Now she's getting a little bit of extra brake, and I'm showing her my back, trying to make her as secure and comfortable as possible and be as unthreatening as possible. Everything with the horse I kind of want to make is black and white. If you let me saddle you, we're going to just stand here and rest and relax. If you choose to not let me saddle you, that's okay, but you have chosen work at that point. Your choice. Always want to set it up where it's her choice. And again, see, pretty high-headed. I do try to rub it around that scar on her shoulder. She really doesn't seem to react to that scar on her shoulder much at all. But I do try to make sure that I'm going to get the corner of the saddle pad in there, and I'm not going to avoid that scar. I want to touch it purposefully to be sure that she's aware. Horses can be stoic about things, and they can have more of a problem there than you think that they do. So even if you're not getting a big reaction, if it's an area where you might expect to get a big reaction, you might still want to spend some time there. Now she's following me readily, but notice which eye I'm in. Okay. So she didn't have to go too far that time. As soon as I start on the circle on this right side of her, I seldom go very far before I'm getting steps with the front feet. I am kissing, although I know you don't have audio from the video, but I will kiss along with, so you can see the next interaction I have with her there. I'm gonna kiss just like I would, so you can see how often and how much I'm doing that. Okay, so head's a little bit better right here, not quite as high or the nose out as rigidly as it was before. Okay, disregard the last kissing. I was going to get the saddle right there. That gives you an idea, though. I kind of am talking to him. If I had a word I wanted to use for this horse to come to me, establish an actual cue there, I would not be using it yet. Okay, you need to have the action established. Just the kiss just means hey, or move your feet. My body language providing the rest of that cue, and that's not on her well enough that I would be trying to associate an actual verbal cue with it yet. I really want the action in there pretty solid before I try overlaying and associating a verbal cue. I think I'm just going to try to fix the pad because it's leaning on her a little bit. Oh, maybe I'll do that next time. So I would be just kissing to her like that to put a little pressure on her, hoping to get her nose and her to turn into me. But if she trots off, that's, you know, here's your two choices. Pick one. Right there. So now she's made the choice that I want her to make. Horse training is always simple. If you can't explain what you're doing to a 5-year-old, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. It is, however, 4,000 simple things. Breaking pattern. Don't put the saddle all the way up there and she gets to walk off. Not what she expected. But she just walked off, her head in terrible, so that wasn't a very bad interaction. Now I am using what I call my old colt breaking saddle. It's the one that, if I have to designate a saddle to do something that might get torn up, this is that saddle. It's also fairly light. I had a good idea I was going to be chasing a horse around for 20 minutes carrying a saddle, so I picked the heavy one. It does fit a small horse fairly well too, and as you can tell, this mare's not exactly big. Now, as I get more into the saddling here, you'll notice that she doesn't come to me as well, and I'm okay with that. Again, expectations. You can see I don't pick the stirrup and the ladder goes up and all of that. I'm expecting her to make progress. That inherently means that I'm not expecting it to be as good as it can be today. So I want to get to a point where we're acceptable, and then I want it a little better tomorrow and a little better the day after that, and so forth. So she didn't change eyes on me. So maybe tomorrow or 2 days from now, she's still coming to me when I have the saddle, and that's a good indication of the progress that I'm making. Also, maybe this time it's going to take me an hour. Maybe tomorrow it takes me 40 minutes to get to a little better place. And then the next day maybe it takes me 30 minutes to get to a little better place. So we're getting a little bit of progress and we're getting it quicker each time. And that's sort of what I'm looking for. And we probably, I think I saddled her 3 or 4 times today. We probably need to saddle her this way 100 times or so in order to try to overcome that old pattern and make her, or not make her, but set it up so that she makes the choice to allow herself to be saddled over the alternative 100 times. When I didn't cinch her up, this mare is a little cinchy. I was a little concerned that the saddle might fall underneath her. Could get stepped on. Again, that's why this saddle's on her and not one of my better ones. I'll say you don't see me putting a lot of pressure on this little mare. That would be the course I'd prefer to take with a PTSD horse. Now again, things can get extreme with them, and sometimes you kind of have to fight fire with fire in order to motivate them enough to think and to help them out of the mental rut that they're in. But if I can cause the thinking, get them out of the reactive state of mind, and get a new pattern established without using lots of pressure, that certainly would be my preference. Apparently we're just going for a little walk. That's okay, she's thinking while she's walking. You can see she's not riding the rail right there. So she's thinking about coming in to me. She just hasn't quite made that choice. And I'm kind of just holding what I got. I'm just managing her until she makes the choice. I look like her nose came to me a little bit right there. So she's thinking about, her nose is definitely to me right there. So as soon as she kind of starts making that turn to me, I just stop. Maybe I'll take a step away. I'm definitely leaning away. Yeah, there's a step. So just creating that vacuum and inviting her to come to me. And then we'll just let her sit there and soak for a minute. All about setting it up, having her make the choice. We're going to deal with the buddy sour problem also, and that uses the same philosophy. Essentially, we're going to make being around the buddy work and being by herself with me rest, and we're just going to set that up over and over and over again until she starts to have a pretty clear pattern of making the better choice. Rubbing her neck again, giving her a good little break. Right, we kind of just cleared a hurdle. She came to me very nicely that time after her little walk. So give her a nice big break. She has been wanting to graze over there. She was loose in the round pen for maybe 5 minutes or something while I was getting the camera ready and getting the saddle and all of that stuff out there. And she was got some nutsedge that's coming up in the round pen. You can't really see it on camera, but she was grazing in that area. I don't want her grazing. I want her working. So this may be another little training cycle regression. I'm pretty sure she does have one of those while I have the saddle in my hands. So the first time she just walked away. This time she trotted. So I saddled her there a little more carefully than I normally do. I wanted it to be successful, and again, my normal is a pattern. So slowing that pattern down or doing it a little more carefully is a break from the pattern. And she was licking and chewing right there. She also takes a good many deep breaths. I'm having a little trouble seeing those spots myself. And what I video edit on this is a pretty small screen. It's almost like watching it on a phone. In the window I have it on in the computer, so you may be seeing a lot more detail than I am. But now we're going to add the girth to the mix. This is called checking out the salesman. This behavior, she's not trying to bite me. She's just seeing if I'm giving her any indications that something's wrong and she needs to be concerned. And I'm hoping I can finish saddling her here. As she walks away, I can't. So, back girth's still hanging. Latigo is pulled a little bit snug, but like if she got to running around right now, this would probably be a pretty good wreck. Hey, that's what happens when you make bad choices, right? So, it's alright. It's also why I use old, beat-up saddles for this stuff. Do you enjoy trotting around with something banging into your knees? Is that fun for you? Well, yes, I do that every chance I get. Giving her the opportunity to turn in. Are you going to take it? Are you going to take it? Doesn't appear so. Maybe now. So, letting her think. She can sit there and just walk around this round pen all day if she likes, and that's not going to cause any harm. Let them think. How about now? Would you like to come to me again now? Must have put her nose away. Now she's thinking about it. Nose is tipped to me a little. This is one of those little spots where she likes to turn into me. Nope, not this time. There's a flag she just walked around on the ground. So that flag may have stopped her, and now she's thinking about it again. Maybe I will turn into him. She changed eyes right there, which is, again, not something I'm normally going to want to see, but that's actually a good thing. She put me on her left side that time, which is something she doesn't do very often. So in this particular horse's case, that was progress. Okay, now we're just going to finish saddling her up like that's everything I intended it to be. Tuck the tail in, take the stirrup down, and again, she walked off a few steps. Hey, that's way better than sitting back and tearing down the whole round pin, isn't it? So, while that doesn't look great to me, that was, for this horse, a form of progress. Don't set your bar too high. Take small victories and build on them, especially with a horse like this that has some pretty deep-seated issues. Now here I'm checking out her eyes. Will she keep me on the right eye? That's what I want to see right there. Checking out the salesman again. So the checking out the salesman behavior, you generally see that right before your victory. Don't ever discourage it. Don't pop them in the nose or something like they're trying to bite you. You just let them do it. I'll either just real low key keep doing what I'm doing, or I'll stop and freeze and let them, if they're a more sensitive kind of horse or a real sensitive spot, then I'll probably freeze and let them sniff me. But for this little mare, I kind of just kept doing what I was doing. Again, I've saddled her hundreds of times at this point, so there's no shock in her mind what's coming next. Move the feet. Come on, come on. There you go. Front feet get to moving a little bit, but then they stop. Ooh, you want to come to me? Come on, you can do it. Quitter. All right. So we saddled her the right, then the left, now the right again. particularly because this mare is going to a household with kids and will be ridden by the kid. I don't think he's actually strong enough to put a saddle on her yet, so the dad has to saddle the horse for him at this point, which is a good thing. But I still want to break as many patterns as I can where there's really, she's checking out the salesman and I just froze to let her do it. I want to kind of prepare her for as many different occurrences throughout this and get her okay with them as possible. We do have some horse flies working. So that's our first pretty decent saddling, no walking off, and look, her head didn't get bad, didn't get real high or anything. She really pretty well yielded for that one. That was a significant improvement. Again, I'm trying to rub that spot on her neck and try to get her to acknowledge that it feels so good. I'm giving her a real hard, good scratching up in her mane right now too. Nope, she's not going to admit it feels good to her. But hey, readily came with me that time, right? So that's good. Not trying to change eyes on me anymore. Checking out the salesman. All of this checking out the salesman stuff, that's a real good indicator that she's thinking. Not reactive. She's giving me a chance here. She's seeing what the outcome's going to be if she makes the good choice. Real good indicator. That's definitely one of those signs that I don't hear talked about and is a pretty big indicator that things are heading in the right direction, so don't mess it up. Didn't come right back to me. Back to work. Sorry, I'm doing the voiceover here on a Sunday afternoon, kind of a lazy day, and apparently I'm trying to fall asleep in my chair. That's how exciting it is watching myself work, let me tell you. Last time we saddled her on the right, I would say we saddled her on the left this time. Okay, so her head again is a little better. She's still paying pretty strong attention to what I'm doing. Not as low or relaxed as it could be, but significantly better than even the first times I put the saddle pad on her initially. And she just let it down a little bit there about 5 seconds ago. Let it down a little bit more right there. Checking out the salesman, but notice she let me do a fair bit before she did it this time. She's not feeling the need to check out the salesman as much. We are pretty well done. That's 2 times from either side, and the last 2 times I saddled her, she didn't hardly move a muscle. Stood there nice and calm and relaxed. Lots of big scratches, and we're going to call it a day. So we'll see you next time. We're going to check her out again and make sure it's stuck. So come back for round 2.